Good morning, everyone. This is Scott Jorgens from Endeavour Solutions. Thank you very much for joining us. Today's webinar is on Microsoft Dynamics GP and a focus on EDI. We're very happy to have our friends from Data Masons come and help us today and show us how EDI can be made simple. Quickly about Endeavour, for those who aren't familiar with us, we've been around for 25 years now. Have over 450 active clients across Canada and parts of the U.S., core offices in Toronto and Halifax, as well as Montreal, London, and Edmonton. Our lines of business are advisory services around ERP and CRM, implementations around Microsoft Dynamics GP, CRM, Office 365, and ongoing optimization and support for our clients. Core values of integrity, trust, and accountability. We hold true to each of our consultants and work with our clients day to day in helping them help their businesses succeed. So our agenda, a little quick EDI 101, talk about integration challenges and various approaches, recognize what goes well, what could go wrong, and a little shout out to Data Masons on some of their tool sets and providing a demonstration. So with that in mind, I'm going to transfer it over to Brian. I'll let you introduce yourself, and over to you.
Well, great. Scott, really appreciate it. And again, thank you for everyone who's taken the time here today, either live or potentially watching the recording. Again, my name is Brian Lynch, and I am from Data Masons. I joined the community back in 1997, so I've been to Fargo many times, worked with Great Plains really since the DOS days, so it's been pretty exciting to see the community grow. As Scott said, we're going to try to give everyone a little bit of education in regards to some of the options, the benefits, challenges, et cetera, associated with EDI, which is really the notion of electronically trading with some of your key partners. Data Masons has been doing this for actually over 20 years, 1,500 customers globally, over 2,800 EDI partners that we've helped automate with some of the other Dynamics GP users. So with that, if you think about your dynamic system and basically the entities that you may trade with, for instance, maybe you are working with key suppliers where you are issuing out purchase orders, you want to have your partners acknowledge those purchase orders, maybe as they ship product, whether to your facility or to one of your customers, getting notifications, ultimately paying for those goods, issuing out remittances, etc. So really that procure to pay kind of automation between you and your supplier. A lot of times we'll see EDI in the notion of your customers, and so in that area we're kind of reversing the process flow. We're now receiving purchase orders or sales orders. We're integrating that into oftentimes sales order processing. We're now sending out PO acknowledgments. Yes, we got the order. Yes, the price was correct. Yes, we can fulfill on time with the right quantity. You're really being easier to do business with because you're not only able to integrate the transaction into your system quicker and more accurately, but you're also giving, in essence, near-time updates, to these partners. And so as you look at some of the other types of relationships, you have other documents you might be doing with customers. You may be automating with your third-party warehouse. And again, whether you're doing that top customers or suppliers, you've got a facility that you have contracted with to physically ship your goods, and now we need to send them our picking tickets, receive back the shipping updates of what they've actually fulfilled, having inventory levels, including for those of you that may be doing serial or lot tracking. so you have more granular visibility to what's going on in those facilities. If you think about doing this in a non-integrated fashion, a lot of times it's a lot of paper, it's faxes, it's emails, and unfortunately the nature of us humans, every once in a while we make mistakes, oftentimes not intentional, but just the day gets to us, we fat finger something, and ultimately this can have causes and impacts to the business. EDI helps us to reduce and eliminate those types of issues. But again, you can see automating carriers, broker trading networks, and even with your potentially some of your banking transactions. So this is really the notion of what EDI is helping us accomplish, a system-to-system transformation and transfer of key supply chain documents.
Can you talk to the same slide, but within the context of those that are entering or halfway through their e-commerce journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, we definitely see more and more e-commerce, projects out there, whether it's just a single website or multiple brands. And so a lot of times as you are, putting those sites up, really that first slide, dealing with suppliers or potentially third-party logistics might come into play. And so this is the notion where maybe not only are you selling your own catalog of goods, but you're also expanding that to do, in essence, a drop ship program. And so now we need to publish up rich media information, what our suppliers' availability is, what products out of their catalog that we're selling, at what price are we doing. EDI can definitely have an impact to those programs because, as you can imagine, especially if you have a lot of items, keeping up with those daily inventory levels, making sure that you've got the most accurate pricing, all of that becomes very critical. And so EDI can ensure that the details are correct within GP, and then from that point, depending on your e-commerce platform and how you've went about it, again, now you have the information available that you can now consume and ultimately publish out to your site. So it's a good observation, and definitely something that we see more and more where the two technologies can work hand in hand together. Now, for those of you that maybe are in different stages of EDI, the reality is EDI, electronic data interchange, really can mean a lot of different things to different people. Here in North America, you often hear EDI really being a representation of what's called ANSI X12. And so, for instance, in this purchase order, they have a variable length format that basically the computers are able to read. Now, unfortunately, doing this as long as I have, I can't actually read this, where we get the name of the person, we get contact information, etc. That same details represented in an XML format, now we start to see some of the pros and cons to some of the other formats. One of the benefits is that we as humans can read the XML, meaning that PO number, name, etc. We can see those details. The challenge you can see also is it's a little bit more verbose. So it takes about 10 times as many characters to transmit the same amount of information. And it's also one where it's not necessarily a standard, meaning that, here we called it name, but maybe someone else called it seller's name. Here we called it PO number, someone else called it PO pound sign. And so we as humans can kind of read it, but it makes the job of the computer translation a little bit harder, whereas with the EDI standards, there's kind of a set way of transmitting data. And then lastly is, just those organizations that maybe do not have a standard, maybe are doing flat files like Excel CSVs. Again, we're getting the same information, it's just how is it actually getting presented. And I always like to kind of call out, for instance, Walmart. they take 120 pages to describe their purchase order. And so there is some complexity in regards to automating some of these large national accounts. And again, as you look at the different types of EDI, whether you build it yourself or you outsource, this may be one factor. Do you have the resources to do what's called mapping that basically gets into the specific records and fields and the rules that go along with them? So again, with our system, we have 2,800 partners that we have built out. That represents 9,800 different various documents. That continues to grow. More importantly, we keep that up to date. What you'll find is with some of these partners from time to time, they may update their standards, including rewriting them. Each year, the standards board within ANSI and EDIFACT and some of the other standards out there publish out new capabilities, longer fields, new rules within the fields, and so that could have an impact to your EDI program. Now, if you look at the different types of EDI, the reality is you have a couple different choices. And so if we kind of start left to right, the first one that we often see is the notion of web forms, where you get a large national account, maybe an Amazon or a Walmart, just to pick on some of the larger accounts out there. For them to send you paper and process paper is very very costly and is not very timely. And so for their smaller suppliers, what they will do is they will give you a website, somewhat like an e-commerce site, but it's a website where you can retrieve your orders, you can key in your invoices. It's meant for a kind of low volume, tends to be kind of for smaller partners. Oftentimes, really does not offer an integrated solution. But the good news is it's quote-unquote free, meaning all that you have to spend is your time to key the orders in, etc. Now, we do know that, for instance, Walmart actually limits how many transactions per month that you can get this way. At last count, I think it was about 100. So again, it is designed on purpose to be kind of for that quote-unquote smaller kind of relationship. Now from there, what we see kind of a step up to is the notion of a software as a service kind of EDI. And this is beneficial because now instead of going to multiple web portals, one for each business partner, the software as a service kind of offering oftentimes will consolidate that into a single user interface. Again, typically optimized more for lower volumes, but again, now supports multiple partners. They may be able to do a basic integration depending on your volume. And what's really nice about this is, it's usually a fairly lower investment. And the caution that you have to kind of watch out for here is that oftentimes you're paying a transaction fee. And so now all of a sudden, $20, $50, $1, $2 a transaction, where a purchase order, the purchase order acknowledgement, the ASN, the invoice, any retransmission thereof, it starts to add up. And so when someone's doing a couple hundred transactions or more, potentially this could be, cost prohibitive or comparative to, for instance, the last column, a managed solution. But as we look at the other two options, you have kind of the classic make or buy decision, where you've got an in-house staff, you're familiar with building out the various maps. Again, you build the integration or maybe work with a third party. The investment is overall lower. Again, you have that initial software and again, more your time. And lastly, you have more the managed solution, and this is probably where Data Masons would best fit in, although we do offer the other software as a service and translation tool options as well. But here we've got a higher volume, so there's definitely a business benefit to integrating the transactions. It's pre-built, configurable integration, and kind of from a cost perspective, although higher initially, we have that total investment that, again, the time that you're spending, the accuracy of the data, etc. Usually, again, a pretty strong business case. Now, if you look at the notion of integrated EDI, there are some challenges that you want to be aware of should you be exploring an EDI program or thinking about some of these large national accounts. So we get into things like business rules, unexpected scenarios, scalability, and just overall, GP modifications. And if we think about what some of these areas are, again, when we're processing 5 orders, the notion of scalability is very different than someone who's maybe doing thousands of orders. To Scott's point earlier, someone doing e-commerce, we've helped quite a few customers trading with Amazon, commerce.hub, various kind of website kind of presence. And some of these customers, they'll come in on a Monday or over the weekend, they may have had thousands of orders. And if they had to key those orders in, not only the time that it would have taken, the accuracy that would have caused, but if you think about the other ramifications to the business, those orders are not inside a GP, and so they couldn't release the picking tickets, which means they couldn't necessarily start the picking and shipping process as soon. And now all of a sudden, we have to ship the product out the next day, or we have to pay for a higher level of freight to get an expedited service level. Being able to integrate all of those in right off the bat, again, helps us to protect those areas. GP customizations, we don't see a lot of core source code modifications, but maybe you're using Extender, maybe you're using third-party warehouse management or shipping systems, maybe you've got special rules that you've built into the process flows where, hey, if this customer orders this item, we do X. Those types of things. EDI has to automate what your team is manually doing. And so all of this becomes, pretty critical. You also, as you look at your data, the common area with an EDI is that they're not sending over on the sales order your GP part, your GP AR number. They may or may not be using your addresses, your unit of measures, your warehouse facility codes. All of that notion of cross-referencing their values to your values comes into play. And a lot of times that data might already reside in GP, but the EDI system has to be smart enough to read that Dynamics GP setup. You have turnaround data, which this is the notion that your customer's sending over values that may not be of value to you, but they want to have these in their response. So this may be things like a line item number or a vendor number that doesn't necessarily have a native home in GP, but again, you may need to be sending out ASNs. Duplicate data entry, unexpected data issues, all things that, again, may be a culprit as you get into the notion of integrating. And then lastly, you get into just your EDI partners. Boy, we have hundreds or thousands of customers. Of those, which ones are EDI capable? Of the ones that are EDI capable, how do I communicate? You'll see within an EDI program the notion of what's called a value-added network or third-party kind of communication. You have direct options such as FTP and AS2, the benefit being eliminating the transaction costs that oftentimes may be associated with EDI. Somewhere you got to define, what format, what communication, what partners. And again, standard Dynamics, like most accounting systems, does not do that. Now, if you're doing EDI today, keeping in mind the notion of EDI might be going out to a website or, again, even some light integration options, that, if you've done modifications, GP upgrades may be prohibited or a little bit more costly and difficult. You maybe are working with multiple parties. You've got your hosted EDI system, you've got your custom integration, and now the two, or being supported by different companies and trying to coordinate all the things that need to happen. You get into chargebacks or the notion of penalty fees. If you think about this notion of integrated EDI, it becomes very critical that these documents are accurate and timely. And when they do not happen, that can add a cost to your business partners. Oftentimes those costs are passed back to you in the notion of a chargeback or a penalty fine. And again, you get into transaction fees, which is really that notion of those documents going back and forth and the cost that may be associated with the documents. Automation is not optimal, so you're clicking buttons, you're not getting alerts that may be needed. The other thing with just your data, we talked about the different types of EDI communication, not only formal standards like ANSI X12 and EDIFACT, Tradecoms as you start to get international, but maybe XML or flat files, all things that become very critical. Again, turnaround data. And in the other area is just the notion of the onboarding. Unfortunately, in some of our conversions, we've heard others say, hey, this has just taken us months and months to get our EDI system operational and onboard new partners, oftentimes at the detriment of the business because there's mandates that they have to comply with. And then overall poor vendor scorecarding where you're just not keeping up with the compliance. Unfortunately, a way to lose that business partner or definitely not gain as much business. So here at Data Basins, we really try to make EDI simple. That's not necessarily saying it's simple for us, but it's our job to make it simple for you. So with us, it's a solution, not a tool. So a full end-to-end offering. We've specifically designed our system not to modify GP, although compatible with other ISVs and other configurations that you've may done. All of this is set up on an automated process so that, again, every 5 minutes, once an hour, you set up the frequency. The system is sending out and receiving transactions. Over 60 different integrated documents, some of the ones that Scott and I covered early on with the notion of customers, suppliers, third-party warehouse, banks, and brokers, having these transactions pre-configured to be processed, very critical. The other thing is we're not trying to be all things to all people. We do appreciate that there's other EDI options out there. We feel that EDI really automates what Dynamics does manually. And so combining the knowledge of EDI with the knowledge of how GP works becomes very critical. It's not order entry, it's sales order processing. How specifically do we need to configure batch IDs and order types and various things that, again, are specific to how you as a Dynamics GP user would work. Again, a true partner, working with Scott's team, working with your team, being able to assist when issues arise. And again, that notion of managed services where we're not asking you to take on a large technical burden. Just as you're remotely connected into our system, seeing the demo here today, our services and professionals can remotely connect into your system, walk your operators, through any questions and issues that they have. So real quickly, just a little bit of a success story we have. We have some more details out on our website, and we've got some information here from Scott from you as well. But we actually had a footwear manufacturer who needed to integrate with Dynamics. They were expanding beyond just into North America, but other countries. And for them, what was really critical was being able to quickly onboard new trading partners. I think they did about 15 new partners over the course of a few weeks. Very, very critical to the business. Being able to roll out the Vantage Point EDI solution to another member company. And again, doing all of that, within the original budget with the no modifications was, again, very critical for them. So my last slide before we kind of peek into the solution here a little bit is just how does Vantage Point kind of work? And if you think of the outside world off to the left, again, customers, suppliers, etc., they're communicating to you in EDI, XML flat files, via communication modes like a value-added network or VAN direct communications like FTP-AS2, Data Masons is kind of sitting in the middle as kind of that traffic cop between you and the outside world and your Dynamics GP system. And so as you'll see here in a moment, we're taking that raw EDI information, we're transforming it into something that's meaningful, we're enriching the data by putting in your part numbers, your pricing, other things that are needed to ultimately connect GP. We physically do that via eConnect, so those of you on the technology side know some of the benefits that Microsoft's prescribed API or application programmer interface. eConnect allows us to ensure all those rules are enforced. As you then execute, say, a pick, pack, ship program, we may have invoices, ASNs, etc. We're going to pull those from Dynamics using SQL and again kind of reverse the process. The Data Mason solution can be loaded on-premise. It can be loaded in a third-party data center. Also supports an Azure deployment, so a software as a service kind of deployment architecture. So with that, in our few minutes kind of remaining, what we're going to do is just kind of peek into the solution here a little bit. Definitely this won't be a full demonstration. Encourage everyone to reach out to Scott and his team. But let's go ahead and kind of take a look at how this will actually work. And so I do appreciate that you may be on a different version of GP. We support actually all the way back to the version 9, as well as the most current Dynamics GP 26. So when we're, say, keying an order in, the reality is a lot of times we're interacting with something like sales order processing. And if you think about all the time to key an order in, what customer, where are we shipping it to, what's the date, what batch ID do I use, the various items, etc. Maybe that takes me 2 to 3 minutes to key an order in. Now multiply that out by the number of EDI orders that we may get on an average day, the invoice associated with it, etc. This is really where that integrated EDI is going to make the most sense. Now this would make for a very, very boring demonstration if I just showed you an order that EDI created. And so let's actually kind of dive a little bit into the solution. And so what we're going to do is go ahead and log into Vantage Point. Now Vantage Point is an unlimited number of users. It is a role-based system, and so I'm currently logged in as an administrator. I can see all of the transactions, some of the key performance indicators, and so the reality is if this is running every minute, once an hour, again, whatever frequency you define, it's looking for rules that you wanted us to enforce. So was the price correct? Is this a valid customer, a valid item, etc.? And we get those notifications both in the application, but more importantly within the emails and pages that you've directed our system to go through. Again, we talked about the notion of configuring our various trading partners. Here, I'm going to actually run through Target as one of my customers. We're actually telling the system, Target is linked to my customer. Here, everyone will recognize the demo data, Aaron Fitz. And so with that target partner, we're doing invoices, purchase orders, ship notifications, the fact that it is production, the fact that it is a customer, we can set up those relationships. Again, whether it's customers, suppliers, third-party logistics, etc. Now, again, we talked about the fact that, we support, those 60-plus transactions into and out of Dynamics GP, so pre-configured. If I were to quote-unquote click the button, we also recognize that, maybe to put that into more of a flow menu. Now again, I'm logged in as an administrator. I have literally every single option turned on. So yes, I'm going to send a PO. Yes, I'm going to send out a PO acknowledgement. Yes, I'm going to process inbound PO changes if those are set up. The reality of your environment is you're only probably going to have a few of these per role. So again, these are configured to your situation, but the order to cash cycle, the procure to pay, i.e. suppliers, logistics and transport, your product management, again, speaking to kind of that e-commerce environment. And again, if I wanted to quote-unquote click the buttons, I could do that. However, what most of my customers do is they take advantage of our automation system. And what the automation system is basically doing is it is automating the process as we go through to say, hey, every few minutes we've got a transaction that we want to automate and send those over. And so through that kind of workflow, I can say what transactions are actually happening, when are those occurring, for the mere fact of, say, sending out an invoice, what are the specific steps that will actually happen? These tasks are actually a configuration of what's specific to your business. For instance, maybe you've got multiple legal entities. Again, we ship with these tasks pre-built, these workflows kind of pre-built. However, in our deployment together, we then tailor that to your specific situation. But armed with the automation, armed with basically the business partners and the documents that we have received, we're actually getting in, raw EDI information. And what's happening with that detail is we actually have a transaction, and we'll kind of right-click here a little bit. This is the raw EDI that your business partner has sent to you. And again, what we've done is we've transformed that in a way that we can now read the actual data. So we've mashed it up with XML. And more importantly, we can take this information and we can look at it in more of the traditional kind of form view. Here's our customer information, here's our line item information, and these are the details that we're now sending over to sales order processing. And so that is basically how the system at a high level is automating the overall transaction flows. Here we kind of demonstrated in inbound sales orders, but again, there's 60 plus other transactions that we're doing. So with that, again, definitely encourage you to reach out to Scott's team if you'd like to see a little bit of a deeper dive.
That's been fantastic. Thank you very much, Brian. Endeavour, in conjunction with Data Masons, can help you set some of your EDI strategies, look at a roadmap for maturity, how does e-commerce play into it. So with that said, thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Have a wonderful day, and look forward to talking with you in the future.